it so that people are aware we're recording, and we'll have this out and published so people can watch it afterwards as well. So yeah, back to Doug, or Dynamics User Groups. We've been around for 30 years. It's a 30-year anniversary of what started over in Europe as a forum, an online forum, and has grown to include a beautiful, vibrant community that's holding events locally and regionally and nationally around the world now. So we're super excited by that. And it's free to join. If you're not a part of it, you can go to dynamicsusergroup.com and join us and keep in touch with everything we're doing. These are meetups. We are hosting it on Teams, so keep in mind if you have a question, if you could use the raise your hand button up at the top. We'll keep an eye out and get you on and off mute so you can talk and join us in the discussions as we get through our presentation and our talk here. And just keep in mind, keep everything respectful. Again, part of diversity, inclusion, and equity is, in my opinion, having these conversations in a respectful manner with each other, so that we have a good, solid discourse. If you haven't been out, again, we got tons of programs out there. So when you visit the site, take a look at what we've got to offer. The forums I mentioned that's been around for 30 years, the webinars, the conferences, we've got one coming up. So keep that in mind. And the YouTube channel is just awesome. So there's a lot of great content out there. Speaking of those events, just regionally, here's what we got coming. Canada, Rocky Mountain, Ohio Valley, Texas, Southeast. A lot of folks online with us are involved in some of those, on the planning side. And then, like I mentioned, internationally, super excited that we're heading to Africa and Europe this year. I saw that. I think Frederick's online with us. He's one of the leaders. Yeah, I see him clapping. Super excited to get over and spread. And we got great attendance already. We're up over 100 in each of those places. So looking good and excited to be there. And then, of course, DynamicsCon, which is coming up just in a short few weeks here. So that is your large event with a lot of education, networking, and it's in Chicago. And we're super excited about that. And with that, that's the slides. We don't have much outside of the slides. I'm going to keep this deck up for just a second as I just kind of get ready to introduce folks. And I'm going to kick it over to Robin, I think, first, if that's okay, Robin, and just have you start and introduce yourself and why we're doing this and why you're doing it. And I'm gonna stop sharing because I don't think we need to see this as the highlight. We'd love to see you instead. So thank you, Robin, and thank you everybody for being here with us.
Yeah, hi. My name's Robin Fennell. It's nice to meet you. Just a little background on me. I have been in the Microsoft space for a long time, since around 2008, and I've been involved in the community in one way or another since about a year after that. One of the reasons that we decided to begin this Doug Diverse Minds meetup goes back about a year, actually, to last year's DynamicsCon. I was talking to Mark Apicella. We were standing in the middle of the expo area and we were having a conversation. And the fact that there were different groups within the community, but there wasn't one that was focused on, like, for instance, LGBTQIA, right? And how that we felt was amiss. And we went to Liz and we kind of spoke to Liz and Molly about it and said, hey, we'd be interested in starting a group focused on this and other diversity issues. And they said, hey, we think that's a great idea. And we got all excited about it, started making some plans. We spoke to Jody about it there last year, talked a little bit more about it. And then life, as you know, happens and it kind of fell off a little bit, right? And then I think it was about last October after Summit, there were some of us who started talking about it again and we revisited it and we brought Bobby in, and between Bobby and Jody and myself and Liz, we thought, oh, you know what? Taylor has this group and it's focused on accessibility and diversity. Maybe he'd like to be involved. So then we brought Taylor in, and then we thought, oh, you know what? We're not representing everybody, so maybe we should bring some other people in. And that's kind of how Diverse Minds came to be and got started, right? It was definitely a road to get here, but I think that the conversations that we want to have are important. As I said to Bobby a few minutes ago, now more than ever, with the way things are going, I think that it's important to keep diversity in the forefront of the conversation. So that's kind of how we came to be overall. Bobby, do you have anything to add to that? I guess you're on mute.
I am on mute. You summed it up beautifully, Robin. I appreciate that recap, and I think, to just to kind of, put a double exclamation on what you said. It's creating a space for us to really define and to further define what diversity, what, uplifting diversity, inclusion, and equity, DEI, what that means. I think it's confusing, I think, to understand what this means and how it should be approached. And I think, like you said, in a time where I think there's a lot of confusion around how we get to this and how we continue to talk about it. So I'm happy to provide this space and be in this space with everybody to continue these conversations and find that next level and those continuing levels of understanding of where each of us are coming from in these different areas. And like you said, as we find other areas, bringing other folks and hearing other stories, and just continue to evolve ourselves to a higher level of acceptance and thinking, is the goal. And I appreciate that. And again, that's why we're here today, is to introduce some of where we are. So that's why, each of us are stepping up. So love to hear, Robin, your story, and why obviously why LGBTQ, AI is important, and why we're had that as part of our ongoing starting
Yeah.
initiative.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess my story starts way back, right? So I was raised in the Midwest in Oklahoma and Arkansas, and my grandparents were Mormon, and we grew up right next to them. So I was raised Mormon. And when you're raised in a somewhat religious kind of environment, you grow up, you get married, you have kids, that's what you do. So I grew up and I got married at 18 and had kids, right? And a couple of years into that, I was working in telecom and well, actually before that, I was in the army for a while and first, and realized that I wasn't happy married, and I wasn't where I was supposed to be, and I got divorced, and then went to work in telecom, in the telecom industry, and went to work for a company called Chat Communication Services. Actually, it was women owned, women led, 90% women. It was like 70% women employees, 90% women in leads, like leads, right? And it was a very, very big woman focused forefront company. And there was a particular person who worked there. And when I met this particular person, I was like, oh, oh, okay. And became friends with them and realized that I was attracted to women. And it was not something that I was unaware of, but it wasn't something that I was comfortable with, because that's not what you did, right? And meeting her and meeting the company, I realized that it was it was not abnormal or something that was wrong or shouldn't be happening. Okay. So here I am in my 20s and I come out to the world. Okay. By this time, I'm in California and I'm living, and I'm happy, and I am in a long-term relationship. And we move forward, and things don't always work out, and I end up not together with this person anymore, and it was long term, so into my 30s. And at that time I ended up working for an escrow company in real estate, and the bottom fell out of real estate, and I couldn't afford to live in California anymore. And I moved to Oregon. I had my kid's dad actually lived up here, and he's like, "Hey, it's way cheaper to live up here. Why don't you move up here?" And I said, okay. So I moved up and I lived with him and his wife for a while, and till I found my own place. And the town that I live in, which is Tillamook, Oregon. Okay, Tillamook Cheese and Ice Cream. It's a wonderful community. It's it's a farmer-led dairy community. It's small, it's close-knit. And when I got up here, um, I looked around and there was zero LGBTQ community at all, right? And it's 85 miles over a summit in any direction to get anywhere. Okay. So there's no community here. I don't know anybody. I don't feel comfortable. I went to work at Tillamook, and like within my first couple of weeks there, you're working with people and it's kind of a good old boy environment when I started there many, many years ago. And there were some disparaging comments made um, about the gay community. And at that point, I literally in my 30s went back into the closet and dated a man and married a man in Tillamook who was at the time my best friend, and knew my background, knew my past. We were comfortable together. So, um, but in my 30s, I am back in the closet, not living my life the way I want to live it, and was living with him married for almost 8 years. And then um, I met a friend, somebody who came back from the military, and the second that I saw her, I just went, "Oh, this isn't going to work." And we started hanging out and became friends. And I went to my husband at the time and I said, "Chris, I can't stay married to you, and this is why." And he goes, "Well, I figured it was going to happen at some point one day." He goes, "And I'm happy for you. That's great, you know." And and had to come back out of the closet to all of my friends, all of my coworkers, my company, everybody. Um, we dated for over a year, got married, went back to the company, and when we turned in all of our paperwork because we got married 2 weeks later, her boss fired her for a safety infraction because she was a female on an all-male crew, and none of them were happy with what had happened. So it became a big thing, right? Um, that was in 2015. Shortly after that, we got a new HR person in. The HR person was very about DEI, brought a lot of the different celebrations to the forefront. And then all of a sudden, we had a pride cohort, and we were, bringing things to light about um, our community and other communities. We had celebrations every month for different DEI things, which was wonderful. But she still lost her job. It was still uncomfortable. There were still people who worked at the company and were angry that they were celebrating LGBTQIA or pushing a gay agenda in our company. So that's why I'm here. That's why I think it's still important, because even today, it's 2025, and there are still companies who fire people for being who they are, or loving and marrying somebody that they love and want to be with and spend their life with, and it's still okay. People still think that's okay, and I think it's important now more than ever to make sure that there's a safe space for people, not just who are LGBTQ, but people who have neurodiversity or people who have accessibility issues and aren't getting the needs met that they need because we're erasing DEI. So that's my story. That's why I'm here. That's why this is important to me. And I told Bobby that I brought my Kleenex today, and this is why, because I obviously get emotional, and I want to leave you with a question. Like, if there was something that kept you from living your life the way that you were comfortable living it in any way for any reason, just would you want to see that addressed? And would you want to be able to live the way that makes you happy and is authentic to you? So,
Robin, thank you so much for opening up like that. I'm also fighting back, the emotion and trying to keep it together. And I didn't bring tissue close by, so I'd have to get up and then you'd see the shorts I'm wearing we talked about earlier. And nobody wants to see that on camera. So, um, wow. I mean, key things out of there again, I think that's, I'll take a moment to kind of say, as a white person, white male in the United States, I do feel and becoming more and more aware and continuing to become aware of the privilege that I have, that I take for granted, that you just don't think about. Little things like being able to go to a company and feel comfortable, because there's nothing really that's holding me back or typically um hindering me. And to hear your story and to feel that what you were talking about, when you get an HR person, that again, it's not about a gay agenda. It's more about just being open and honest and making everybody feel comfortable when they don't naturally, because you're in a natural position where you don't feel comfortable, and making sure that you do. And that's again what we're here to accomplish, is to continue to provide that space and to talk about why understanding is important.
mhm.
That's the key: understanding and being respectful and being open to everybody. And that's the important part. So I mean, that was just such a great story, and retelling, and you told us a similar story before, and I'm still getting emotional. That's again, it's why we're here, and that's why it's important. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Thanks. I feel it's very important to be open, and I mean, obviously, there are things I'm not always going to agree with everybody in the world, right? But having the ability to enter into a conversation with somebody with an open mind and know that the way that they believe or the way that they choose to live their life doesn't impact me and the way I choose to live my life, and just celebrating that we each have the ability to do that. And I
Yeah.
think that that's what again, this group is all about, helping people realize that that's all we're looking for, right? Just the
Yeah.
ability to live our life authentically. So
We
I'm going to
definitely
let
we need
you.
a ghost hug reaction in there. I'd love, yeah, sending. I love this ghost hug idea that I'm hugging, but it's you can't see it, but hopefully you feel it.
Yeah,
Any
thanks.
questions or anything anybody's, any topic around LGBTQ that you're interested in talking about or commenting on, please raise your hand or come off, mute and let us know. Somebody is typing. We'll just see what that is. Hopefully it's
Yeah.
another hug coming your way, but
Well, and I just want to say,
Hey, Bobby,
I met, oh, go
sorry.
ahead. Nope, go ahead.
Okay, I just want to quickly say, Robin, really thank you for sharing all that. And I think it is important because there's probably a lot of people in this community that want to be more open about it and share their struggles, but are a little scared to. So, sorry. So it's nice that you're doing it so other people feel that their voice is also being heard through you.
Thanks, Taylor.
it's brave to step out of your comfort zone and talk about something that isn't easy to talk about, knowing that hopefully it is opening a door, even if it's that's one door, and that opens another door and opens another door. Yeah. Jody, you were
Yeah.
going to say something too.
Oh, I just want to say, I met Robin, gosh, what was it, back 2017, 2018
Mhm.
time period at a focus event. And I've just always loved your energy, right?
Oh, thanks.
It never, I guess on one level I kind of knew, but it never really mattered to me.
Mhm.
whether you were gay or straight or pink or purple, or I loved your energy. And then we were out of touch for a long time. And I was really excited a couple of years ago when you were also part of the speaking team at the DynamicsCon in Austin, and we got to reconnect.
Yes. Yeah.
I just love it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So Bobby, I'll let you choose who goes next, and I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off for a minute.
Yeah.
And
Thanks again,
clean myself
Robin.
up.
Yeah. Just, I
Yeah.
mean, such a, impactful, story to hear too. Jody, you want to talk about why this is important to you and where
Sure.
obviously I think we all agree all of these topics are, but there's each of us have a unique little niche in this conversation. So yeah, let's hear from you.
So I've been in the dynamics. I made notes because I lose track of what I'm saying. So when you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking at. I've been in the dynamics community since around 2014, 2015. And most of my experience was in manufacturing. About 3.5 years ago, I came to work for the city of Columbus in Ohio. And my degree is in women's studies. So I grew up surrounded by this incredibly diverse group of people. One of my first babysitters was deaf. So I learned that when you talk to people, you have to look at them. One of my high school boyfriend's sisters was gay. I think that I knew that before she knew that. And actually kind of came out and lived her authentic self. They're just my rifle coach was in a wheelchair, quadriplegic. I met a woman when I was in college helping out with the wheelchair games. She's female, in a wheelchair and gay. And there are just all these people in my life it never occurred to me growing up that they wouldn't be treated the same as everyone else, that we wouldn't do things to have these wonderful people included in our lives. If it's a matter of what restaurant you choose because you can get into it in a wheelchair, all of that was just, of course, that's what you do. So I went to college and realized that not everyone thinks that way. And so I started with looking at a teaching degree. And then I found out that I took one of my electives was a women's studies class. And then I found out that was an option for a degree. So I got my degree in women's studies, which was terribly useful in the job market. But it was really fun to get. There was a lot of focus on the history of people that were not the norm. And then fast forward, I got involved, got a job in manufacturing. I was often the only woman in the room. I had to fight to have my voice heard, which was new for me because the community that I grew up in, that wasn't an issue. So it was kind of a new thing for me to learn that women weren't as respected or as listened to or as considered as valuable, especially in the manufacturing realm of things. It's very different now working for the city of Columbus in a public sector entity. I work directly for the auditor. Woman, our staff is very diverse, but my involvement in diversity and diverse minds is, I guess, probably I started out because I wanted women's voices to be heard, and I still do. But then it kind of occurred to me that I want everyone's voices to be heard. And I want everything to be accessible for everyone, whether it's physically accessible or culturally accessible. Like, I want Robin to feel comfortable being a gay woman. I want Taylor to be comfortable with visual disabilities. I want the friends that I have that are in wheelchairs to be able to sit at a table and have the intelligent conversations, because I know that they have incredible opinions. They've all an influence on who made me who I am. And I want more people to experience that. So originally I started out, I was horrified that these wonderfully intelligent, engaging people that helped make me who I am weren't necessarily included naturally. And I wanted to make that better. As I've gotten older, my focus has kind of shifted, and not only do I want them to be included, I want other people to experience and learn from them, because I think it has just made me so much a better person. My son's girlfriend has some mobility issues, and I didn't realize how remiss I had become because I wasn't in direct contact with my wheelchair friends, for lack of a politically correct term, throughout his life growing up, how kind of unaware he was of things. Now he's adapted very quickly. If she says, I need this, he's on it. And now he's much more, looks out for more things to help her. And I just, like I said, as a parent, kind of realized that I let that fall off, and I don't want that to happen anymore. And my son has some neurodiversity issues. So his girlfriend, who has mobility issues, has had them most of her life, was not aware of some of the neurotypical things. So I kind of get to be the mediator sometimes, and educate both of them, which is, I love that. Bringing people together instead of creating divisiveness. So I guess that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I think one of the one of the key things you said there that I just want to uplift is that knowing is growing in my mind. It's like you only, as you're learning, you keep adding on to how you can interact with different folks when like you said, being able to talk directly at somebody. I had the same experience. I'm sure I've told this, a couple of times here and there, but a friend who has difficulty hearing, and I noticed him just doing a little things to try to hear better, and so that did prompt me to try to be conscious about speaking towards him, enunciating very well, just knowing that this person was struggling to hear what I was saying. And if we go out to visit, finding a quiet place in the cafe, so it's like, hey, is this, asking, is this okay for you? Which ear is it? Just little things when you're able to grow with that person, and you're able to grow in other situations. And that's I think the key is that now you're going to take that to the next situation. If you see that person struggling, you'll kind of know how to react and how to help them maybe speak up too. Because a lot of times people don't speak up for themselves. They just kind of do this, or, make accommodations because they don't want to feel different. They don't want to put themselves out there. But you're now aware, and we are more aware. And so we're able to help them. So yeah, I appreciate that call out, Judy. I had asked earlier, and Robin mentioned it. Obviously, we're in a strange time around what it means, what DEI means, like how it's being defined, and I think, being in the government space, I'd asked you if you were comfortable talking at all about anything you're seeing from the government side, because that's where we were talking just before you got on, about this just where things are getting stripped just because it has diversity in a document. It's being stripped out. So there was a like the first female Thunderbird pilot, and all of her accomplishments were stripped from their online databases because it said diversity. It was, or the word inclusion was in the document, so it got arbitrarily stripped out. And so this great accomplishment is now gone from, most records unless they were saved. So it is an interesting time in what this all means, and I think that's why we're here, to define it and to help people understand. Hopefully, as it gets more and more people involved, that it it's about learning, it's about understanding, it's about inclusion, meaning not uplifting somebody above another, but just understanding how to better be with that person and with those people. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you on anything you're seeing on the government side, there in Ohio.
So I have to admit that I'm really fortunate being in Central Ohio, Columbus. We have a huge diverse population, which is interesting since we're kind of right smack dab in the middle of a culture or a agricultural um, state, if you will. I find Columbus has not made a lot of changes as an entity. We have an Office of Diversity and Inclusion. They work on a lot of outreach programs in the community. Matter of fact, just yesterday there was a big thing, like a job fair for the trades. And they're trying to encourage women and minorities to get more involved in the trades. They need people. We've spent the last 20 or so years of where trades were less than, right? When you graduate from high school, you have to go to college, you have to get a degree. That's the only path. And as a result, we have a real shortage of tradespeople. My son is just about ready to complete he did college for a year, hated it, just about ready to complete his apprenticeship program to become a journeyman electrician. And what made me think of that was his union was one of the sponsors for this trade fair. So there's a lot of, it's not necessarily about who you hire. And I didn't realize it had gotten to that point where there were, basically it was just a replacement, and I'm going to kind of show my age here, for affirmative action, right? Where you had to have the token woman on the team. You had to have a token person of color. There were, so you check the boxes. And to me, diversity and inclusion was never about that. So unfortunately, like you said, things are being stripped that shouldn't be. So the pendulum has swung way back the other direction, where we're trying to erase it, if you will. And I think that's the wrong answer. I never hesitate. Like I said, my son's girlfriend is a woman of color. She refers to herself as brown, right? She's a brown person. And I never hesitate to introduce her that way, describe her that way. When I'm talking to someone who's met her, and I'm like, you remember Simone? She's brown. That kind of, because that's part of her identity. To try to step around that, to me is just as disrespectful as using derogatory terms. If someone were trying to describe me and not saying that I'm a woman, or not addressing the fact that I have gray hair and wear glasses, those are things, they're who I am. And it's different, right? Bobby, you and I look different. You should not be describing us the same, because we're not. So that's where it makes me sad, that some of this diversity, equity, and inclusion is being erased. I think it's necessary, but I do think that there are some cases where it went overboard and it was becoming a replacement for affirmative action. And to quote, I don't even know who it was in the news some time ago, and I believe it was actually in relation to the government amount of government waste, is that you're using a sledgehammer when a scalpel is what's needed.
Yep. Any questions around or discussion or comments around what Jody shared? I think that was, again, all important stuff. I think the key there too, in what you said is, in talking to and getting to know your son's girlfriend, partner, that, they're giving that level of comfort on how they like to be addressed. So you can use that, it's kind of, again, getting to know the person and getting to understand where each person is coming from is important to when you're carrying that forward, and then those next interactions.
And I would just add that on the flip side is being forgiving when someone slips up. Like, you have to be able to judge individuals for their intention. I do not get offended when, for the most part, I do not get offended when someone refers to me as a girl, right? I am a girl. I'm a grown girl. I'm a big girl, but I'm a girl. And there's no reason to get upset about that unless the intention behind it was to be derogatory.
Yeah.
And then it can be addressed. But to come down on someone that I work with who has spent their whole life, who clearly has demonstrated that they have respect for me, but still opens doors, right? A gentleman who still opens doors for women. They were raised that way. That's what they're comfortable with. As long as they're not dismissing my opinions, things like that, why would I be offended by that? So remembering to give grace where people are trying.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the key there in what you said is the you'll know I think you tend to I think you would tend to know if somebody's purposely, calling you something, misgendering you, if you've told them and they're being, very intentional about that call out to point to just to, to prove a point or to make a point. If it's truly like I have a daughter who went through about 7 name changes as starting at age like 1. She didn't care for her name, and so one day she's like, my name now is Snow White. And I was like, okay. And so later on, say her name. I think you mean Snow White. And then or as she got older, getting a little upset. But having to say, I get you. We're trying our best, but I've been calling you this real name for 3 years now. So it does take a minute to get around that. Cool. Taylor, are you at a good spot to jump in? I know you're traveling. If you're able to join us and introduce yourself again and how you fit in. Thank you, Jody. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll certainly do my best. The audio is cut out here and there, so hopefully you'll at least get the good idea of what I'm saying. But yeah, my name is Taylor Dorward, and I really appreciate what you, Jody, and Robin have said, and especially what you and Jody were talking about, how having these interactions with people with disabilities and even people who are members of other minority groups, it can really help you educate yourself and make your further interactions with others even better. So I think that's a really good point. Maybe something we could talk about here today or at another point. But my area of expertise in this group is accessibility. And I am very excited about that because I myself have a visual impairment. It's called cortical blindness, and it's blindness caused by damage to the visual cortex in my brain. So it can be a little challenging to describe what it's like, but I would say I have around 70 to 75% of my vision back now. I used to be fully blind, but I still would certainly consider myself a person with a disability. However, I try to not let that limit me in what I want to do. There are certainly some things like driving that I could do if I wanted to, but would not be the safest choice for me or for others. So I choose not to. And partially the government chooses for me not to either. But yeah, so accessibility is something that's a very large passion of mine, but it's something that not very many people are well aware of. And so I try to do my part in raising awareness of that. So whether that be at sessions, uh, doing like a podcast, or even just educating someone on the spot, like on the street. So I'm really excited to be part of this group doing that, and hopefully I can help bring awareness to the topic of accessibility and how broad it is, but also why it's so important. Because I think all of us have someone in their lives who are affected, because around 1 in 4 people have a disability. So whether you have one or not, you more than likely know someone who's really close to you who does have a disability. So that reemphasizes the importance of it. And I won't probably don't have too much time because I don't want to like lose service or anything. And I know me and Bobby are planning on doing a more in-depth episode on accessibility come June, I believe. So I think we'll do a more in-depth intro there. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, I'd love to answer them to the best of my ability.
I just want to make a statement, actually. So, when we were trying to come up with the logo for our Diverse Minds group, there was a lot of stuff that I was not aware of from that accessibility standpoint that Taylor pointed out. So we were looking at colors and designs and lettering and all this other stuff. And Taylor came back and said, hey, just so you guys are aware from an accessibility standpoint, this one would be easier for somebody with like a vision impairment to see or look at or recognize over some of these other ones, and this is why. Um, it was a lot of great information that I never would have thought of before that. So I just really appreciate Taylor and his presence in this group and him being a part of this and helping us realize um, that there are things that we should think about to make life easier for other people. So thank you for that, Taylor.
I would say to just again to uplift that even further, it's for me it's it's probably the most broad learning experience of all of these because I've been a part of uplifting women in tech and women in general was kind of, to Jody's point, that was kind of the first thing. Also, in my journey, people of color. So I've kind of been involved in the thought process, but accessibility at this level was just not something that I was attuned to. And Taylor didn't say it, but we have talked, and we have some fun videos coming out, and we've got a whole episode on accessibility, and we've got sessions at DynamicsCon. So we've got a lot of stuff going on. But what I'm learning and what I'm applying on the daily is incredible. Just what I'm thinking about is like, oh, I'm going to post this, so I got to remember to do alt text, and what are the color choices, and is it, am I providing the best possible content, especially in an industry like ours where it's a lot of content. We're either posting or doing sessions or doing PowerPoints for presentations at implementations, and all the things we do in our industry involve this level of accessibility, attention, because you, at 1 in 4, if you've got a room of 50 people you're presenting to, do the math, you've got, a quarter of those are probably having trouble seeing or hearing or conceptualizing what you've presented because it's too messy, or any of those things you think about when you put something together. And so I've loved that part of it. Madison, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, kind of on Bobby's note, Taylor, has there been anything that a coworker or a friend has kind of implemented to make things a little bit more accessible for you that you appreciated or were truly helpful?
Well, for me personally, I usually don't ask for too many accommodations, especially digital accommodations, because I take care of that on my end using like screen readers and magnification, stuff like that. But for me, the best accommodations I receive are when I'm interacting with people and they get to know me, so they know I have a hard time recognizing faces. And so at conferences, they'll say, "Hey, Taylor, it's Bobby." And then immediately I'm like, "All right, it's Bobby." And like, I know this person because a lot of times at conferences, there are a lot of people who will just say hi to you. And if you see what they look like, you can tell right away, all right, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know this person. They're just being friendly and networking. But
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of times that's challenging for me because I'm having to decide in the moment, do I know this person? Where from? What's their name? Like, am I going to offend them if I ask them their name? So the best thing that people have done for me in that regard is just introducing themselves. It's made it a whole lot easier for me and taken a lot of the stress out of networking.
Very
Again,
cool.
something you typically don't think about in life at these
Yeah.
events. You're meeting so many. It's just something when you start thinking about it, especially if it's an acquaintance. Like if I see Jody, I probably won't introduce myself, but I know that she, doesn't need that. But other people, where I do know, or if I don't know them well enough, it makes sense. I mean, how many we see thousands of people. I have great facial recognition, but very poor name recall sometimes, especially. And so it's always nice to just go ahead and make that introduction, be the first person. Like, hey, even if they know you, you get that back. Or maybe
I'm
they're, like you
glad.
said, are having trouble with that recognition as well.
Yeah, I'm glad that Taylor mentioned that, because I'm telling you, next month I probably would have walked right up to you and been like, "Hey, it's so good to see you in person," and you'd have been like, "Dude, I don't know who this woman is."
Yeah, turning and running.
Well, yeah, I'm glad I brought it up then, and I chose a bad example using Bobby. I know Bobby by now, but yeah.
No, that's
Um,
super helpful though. Thanks, Taylor.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
thank
good
you.
call out. I mean, it's the little things that matter. That it's just that make, again, each of these make an effort, or as we make an effort, touch somebody else and multiple people, that it makes their lives just that little bit easier, and brings them into that fold that they feel like accepted without having to ask. Which again, Taylor pointed out, is like having to ask sometimes when you've got a disability, when you've got something that you're concerned about, you don't want to be called out, you don't want to feel different, and so having somebody preemptively do that for you is, in a way that isn't calling you out, just is natural. It does provide a nice feeling.
Well, and I have to say, I've learned so
Yeah,
much from
and
Taylor.
that's the. Oh, sorry.
No, Taylor,
No,
I just
go
want to
ahead,
say
Jody.
how much I've learned from you. I always consider myself pretty disability aware, if you will, because I've grown up and been around, but most of those issues were mobility and hearing issues. So I have learned a ton just by following you on LinkedIn and different meetings we've been in, and yeah, I'm anxious to share that with people.
Me too.
Well, thank you, Jody. That's certainly my main goal. It's kind of a win-win, sharing my knowledge, but it also makes me feel good to help others make their interactions and content more accessible.
Yeah.
Great. So the last person on and we're missing Mark today too. And he's going to be a great asset. But we'll go ahead and move to Rachel, and Rachel would love to hear why you're involved in your story, and yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so hi everyone. It's been amazing. I'm learning so much about everyone and it's amazing. Okay, so my name is Rachel and I love the UG Diverse Minds. I got the opportunity where Lizzie reached out to me in an email and asked me, Rachel, do you want to join this community? I was like, okay, yes, definitely. I want to be a part of this community because a little background about me. I'm from Nigeria, but I currently live in Malta. And I started my journey in tech like 3 years ago. And before I started, like I had no idea that a lot of things were happening, like careers, there were different careers in tech. Like tech is something that anybody can come into. Because I'm in Nigeria does not mean that I can't get an opportunity in tech. Because then I was looking at tech at something that's okay, like places like Europe, the US, we call it abroad. So I was looking at tech as something that you have to be abroad or be in certain places before you can come into tech. And then having the opportunity to come into tech and getting the opportunity to be myself, because it's quite difficult, especially with our background. There are some ways that you act and people will be like, is this person okay? Maybe maybe people are talking and you're laughing, you're happy, they'll be like, okay, this person is not normal. So stuff like that, you just try to hide yourself. You just try to hide yourself most times because it's quite difficult. So being in a community where I can be myself and also giving the opportunity for people to also be themselves, especially being a Black woman. And like now being in tech, I can count, if I go to a place, I can count the amount of Black women I see. Like maybe a tech event, maybe a job. I can just use my fingers to count the number of Black people or the number of Black women I see in that certain place. So stuff like that. And also coming from my background, I learned something that at least I've changed now, but it's good. So I learned something then that you have to, in order to be like, you don't necessarily have to be kind to people. You just have to, it's like a one-on-one trade where somebody is good to you, then you are good to that person. But I have learned that now that, okay, you don't have to expect things from people. You just have to be kind, be human, treat people the way you want to be treated. And yeah, so it's quite amazing. Yeah. So when I joined tech, like when I started my journey in tech, and I was seeing so many opportunities, I was seeing people reaching out to me to ask me like, Rachel, because then I was having issues with my laptop. I had to go to, if I want to learn anything, because of no light, so I have to walk around to look for a place that has light that I need to power up my laptop to use it. And I was seeing people that are reaching out to me. I was like, wow, okay, you want to help me without asking for anything in return. So it was quite surprising. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah, so yeah, made great point again about the sometimes the lack of just overall diversity we see at our events,
yeah.
especially in certain areas. Obviously, women, I feel like, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, we've got a lot of powerful women in our industry. Like, I feel excited about our particular. I know women in tech is a bigger, broader issue, but in our industry, I just look up and there's so many powerful women leading our industry. I'm excited by that.
Yeah, me
A
too.
lot of them here with us, but just as we expand out and within Dynamics community, within our little piece of tech, there's just a lot of strong voices that are stepping up and leading the way, diverse voices too, not just, white women, but women of all kinds.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah, and if I see any woman in leadership or maybe in a certain position, I'm always very happy because yeah, it's quite difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, we love having your voice with us and coming. What I always ask, what time is it now in Malta? Are you in Malta at the moment, or?
It's almost 6 p.m. Yes.
Okay, so you're sunsetting your day. You're getting ready to enjoy the rest of your evening. We still have to keep working, most of us.
Yeah. And I think tomorrow is also, we have a holiday. Do you all have holidays tomorrow?
Some
No.
people do. For Good Friday, some people
Oh,
have
Good
off.
Oh,
Friday.
sure.
Some
Yeah,
people
that's
do.
true. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
It's not a work
We don't,
holiday,
but some
but
people
yeah.
do.
Not a national holiday, but I'm sure
Mhm.
but yeah, it's the kind of thing where if you were if you're practicing or wanted to take it off, then likely
Mhm.
have that ability. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we have a holiday, so I'm excited.
Good for you. Yeah, that is exciting.
My team in India is off tomorrow as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited that you're here, Rachel. I love learning from new people and just perspective from across the world.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I'm looking forward to it.
That's kind of I've been, like I said, I've working through TechFluent and getting to meet and know more people in our industry that are, international. Is just something that I've loved, being a part of the Doug community, being a part of Doug, having this ability to have access and to be able to communicate in this way is eye-opening. And that's, again, so many favorite things about what I'm doing now, but that's definitely one of them. I see that Priya's online with us. She's, one of my friends, I met through TechFluent. Love hearing about her. She was talking about a holiday she had earlier this week, I believe, too, in her home country, in India. So I just, love, feeling this culture and getting to be a part of this culture. So, and that brings it to me, the wild card in the bunch. Probably, outwardly the least diverse of us all, a white, cis guy that is in tech and has been doing it a long time. And so, yeah, I mean, just to give a background on why this group is important to me and when my journey kind of started, to go way back. I don't know if it was Jody who mentioned this, but just in the idea of what we teach and why DEI is important to define and why it's still important to uplift these stories and keep them prevalent. I grew up in a small town in Virginia, not so far south or west. So it was a suburban area of Washington, D.C., but very steeped in Southern culture. And it felt part of the South. My high school was predominantly white. And what I remember as we went through this process through pandemic and through Black Lives Matter and all these movements that started to bring attention to this next wave of diversity was looking back at what I learned and where I was as a kid, as a person growing up in this town. And one thing that stuck out to me was the what we were taught around slavery and around Civil War, and that was impactful because it was the South, and the lessons we learned were very, to the degree that things are being, washed out now, very washed out. Coming out of elementary school and coming through high school, there was a strong idea that Confederate generals, this was the side that believed in slavery, were heroes. I looked up to these people in a very heroic way because that's the way they were couched, and that's the light that was shone on them. And it wasn't until much later that I was going back to college that I read a book called Black Like Me. It was a novel written in the 60s about a white man, a journalist, who literally took medication to darken his skin so that he could go to the South and feel what it was like to be Black. And he wrote about this. And this book was like a lightning rod. It just hit me right here. And that was probably the start of my journey on, being open to and understanding and broadening my vision on diversity and the world. And it just spiraled from there in a good way, just learning more and being more in tune, to having daughters and picking up that mantle and wanting to, push forward women's issues and being open and again, caring to that. And then working in a diverse community at an end user where our predominant workforce was Vietnamese. And so again, learning to overcome language barrier and understand the level of intelligence that was right behind that language barrier. That was a barrier though. And so, uplifting that and just and to hear, I think Robin pointed out, getting excited again and invigorated to be a voice and an advocate from this side, as a man, as a a cisgender, as a person in tech, just to keep providing a different voice and an advocating voice, to having an invisible disability that nobody would know, but is real, and much like Taylor mentioned, just something that sits there that you wouldn't know, but can affect my health. And so there's another small piece of that accessibility concern and understanding and wanting to be more open and available to that. So that's really my role. I'm excited to be a conduit to provide space and all this and to be a ward of better communication and better understanding.
I got to tell you, Bobby, I'm happy that you're here because there are some things when we talk and there are issues that bring a heaviness to the group. And I think sometimes you point out the beauty in those, not just the heaviness. And you bring kind of a lightheartedness to the conversation too. So I appreciate that you're here, and I appreciate that you facilitate for us a lot because you're probably more well-spoken than I am, for sure. I'm glad that
I doubt that, but
that
I mean,
too.
we're all speaking from a passionate, pedestal. So
You have that director energy.
Yeah.
Keeping us all. Yeah.
Keep us
Well,
on track.
and part of it too is we would be remiss in a group about diversity to not include a white cis male, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole point is, and I go back to one of the things that I learned in my women's studies degree that most people don't know. And one of the terms that became really popular in the 60s was feminazi, right? Feminism. And there was all this backlash about girls want to be boys and all this other kind of thing. But if you go all the way back to pre-revolution and the founding of the United States, women, the feminist movement then, women wanted to be valued and respected for the things that they did. Not that they wanted to do all the things that men did. They wanted to, the idea that taking care of the home, cooking, having empathy, those are important things in our society. And that's kind of the approach that I always try to take with it when it comes to the gender, male, female kind of thing, is that there are ways that both sides have strengths. And we should work to incorporate more of both of those rather than vilify one of them or imply that one is weak and the other is dominant.
Well, and I think when you think about roles in society, right? You have these male roles and you have these female roles. And I think similar to gender roles, right? It's a spectrum. It is truly a spectrum. So me, I love to bake. I love house plants. I love arts and crafts. I love doing all that stuff, right? Eva loves taking a chainsaw out in the woods and sawing down trees, and she loves fishing and camping and working on cars and woodwork and has a whole shop full of things, right? Which are not normal. And I say normal, I don't mean it like that's not normal, it's abnormal, but it's not on a gender spectrum, right? Those are not ones that would fall on the feminine side of the spectrum for activities for people, right? But I think understanding it that it's okay no matter what you do, it's okay because it's all personal. And to the feminazi point, my mom was a single mom growing up, right? And she was like, there is nothing, a divorced single mom who was probably a little bitter, let's be honest, but it was like, there's nothing a man can do for me that I can't do for myself. So she changed her own radiator. She learned how, and this is in the time when there was no YouTube, right? She went and bought like a book and read and figured it out. We didn't have a lot of money, so if our hair dryer broke, she would take our hair dryer apart and figure it out and fix it. And so growing up, we kind of grew up with that, I'm a girl, but I can do whatever I want. There's nothing that stops me. And I think knowing that, again, there's a whole spectrum of things, not just from a gender standpoint or a sexual orientation standpoint or a feminism standpoint or anything else, but there's a whole spectrum of things and people, and we all fit somewhere on there. And just understanding that it's not wrong, it's just different, and we're all okay and we're all great the way we are, and taking that out into our lives and just being kind and sharing that same attitude with everybody. That's where I'm at, and that's why I'm here, and I love all of you for being here with me. So
I have yeah, thank you.
No, go ahead, Rachel, please. No, go ahead.
Yeah, so there's something that Bobby said where he talked about like you having no idea of the history in the US and then learning about it and trying to improve your knowledge about it and getting involved. So for me, I just feel that anybody that has no idea that, okay, there is diversity, there's a lot going on, you just have to learn about it. A lot of things are going on in people's lives. You understand? So anybody can be who they want to be. You just have to learn. You don't have to be ignorant about it. If you're ignorant, just try and learn about it. Try and be involved. Yeah, so that's what I want to say. Yeah.
It's a weird change management philosophy in life. Like, I feel like a lot of times politicians aren't really good at change management. When that's where you're, that's where you are. It's like, we talked about this when we were talking about the group, and we talked about DEI being this really negative buzzword right now because of the way it's being presented. But at the end of the day, I think everything we've said, cumulatively is it's not about, providing opportunity where somebody isn't deserving. It's providing opportunity for everybody. And so that's the thing that gets lost in, well, DEI. Well, it's not about, making sure Rachel gets a job that she's not qualified for. It's making sure Rachel gets the opportunity to have a shot at getting that job. It's making sure that if Robin's gay, she's not being discriminated against because she's gay. Those are the things that are important. It's not Robin gets 20 extra opportunities. It's that Robin gets an opportunity. And that's the exciting thing, that hopefully as a society breaking down and having, conversations around understanding makes it easier and makes that. And I think we'd all agree that's what change management is. It's not about, if I just come to you and say, tomorrow you need to do this, you're likely going to buck back. But if we have a conversation around understanding what the importance is on this particular change, then it's much easier to digest.
Right.
At the end of the day. And that's where I hope we're landing. That I hope that, that as we continue on and we continue to make inroads and get more out there, that more people come to this agreement too, as well.
I am really excited about DynamicsCon next month, and I am really excited about some of the breakouts that are going to be there. And as a group, I know that we're presenting a panel discussion that I think is going to be really interesting and really, really informative. So I'm excited about that.
Me too.
And then I know Taylor's got one on accessibility. I know there's going to be a breakout on LGBTQIA and tech. And one of the cool things, that's one I'm leading, and I submitted my my slide deck the other day, right at the last minute, of course. And one of the things that's in there, though, I think it talks about how you, as like how companies can kind of support LGBTQ in tech, right? What are some different things? But I think the cool thing about that is it applies to any group, any minority group, any area in business where you're lifting people up and helping them be better employees and helping your company support those groups. So I'm kind of excited about some of the content that's going to be there, not just from a technical standpoint or from, a dynamic standpoint, but also from the standpoint of diversity and seeing different points of view. So it's my little kick for DynamicsCon.
I love it.
I'm excited to see you
about
all in person.
I know.
It's careening at this point. If you're internal here, it's careening, the speed of light as we're putting things together. And it's we're excited too. I can't wait. It's going to be a great event, a great venue.
I think I'm more
and my first one on board
year.
with the team. So
yeah, I think I'm more excited about this one than I have been about DynamicsCon in a long time. So it's pretty cool.
Great.
If
And
any
Bobby,
of you guys, sorry, Taylor, go ahead.
All right, so real quick, Bobby, I was saying that was a great point you were making about diversity, and I make the same thing about accessibility and addressing the common misconception that accessibility is giving like an unfair advantage to those with disabilities, but similar to diversity as a whole, the aim isn't to give an unfair advantage, it's just to level the playing field.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
And I'll tell this little story. My husband grew up in southwestern Virginia, where the Civil War is a religion. The War of Northern Aggression, if you will. And not that he was racist, because he wasn't, but just a different perspective on what the war meant and gender roles and all of that stuff. He came up here to work. Several years later, he and I got together and we had a son. And when our son would cry, or he one time said, I can't remember if it was sissy or girl. Don't be a sissy, don't be a girl, something like that. And I was like, oh, time out. That doesn't work for me. You want to tell him not to be a baby? I'm in. But sissy girl as a negative. Nope, that's not going to work here. And he was like, okay, I can see your point. And he worked to change that. Fast forward 20 years, and he's a construction worker. He's an electrician. And he was hiring, moved to the inspection side and was hiring a new inspector. And he was talking to me about it at home, and he was like, I have these two applicants, and they're equally qualified. And one is a woman, and one is a man, and I'm gonna offer it to the woman. And I was like, okay, why? And he said, because I know what a fat old white guy thinks. I need more people on my team, different experiences, different. And so when you say all things are equal, it's not equal. She has an advantage because she has a different point of view. So that was just that people can learn and change, especially when you're not trying to beat them over the head with it. Right. For me, it was just a quiet, these are the things to live and love me. These are the things that are acceptable, and these are the things that aren't. He took those lessons, those and expanded. And plus he worked for the city of Columbus, which is there's so many programs and internal training and things like that are available to us on implicit bias and being a manager. And it really is a huge, great resource that we have. But he took advantage of all that, right? And it is a much better, more well-rounded person now. That I wouldn't hesitate to put him on stage to advocate for me or for any group really, because he wants to know, he wants to understand, he wants people to have, again, equal opportunity. No special, not special, just equal, level the playing field.
I think one of the most important things that I've changed in the way and it's been a struggle, to be honest. It's difficult to get in a situation and have a calm, respectful conversation with somebody who maybe is on an exact opposite, like politically is a very easy one to pick, spectrum of where you believe. If you're LGBTQ and you've got somebody who's over on this other side, with a sign saying down with LGBTQ, that's a pretty broad, chasm to cross. And so what's helped me to at least start a conversation is to try to approach it in a way of how could you, and more like help me understand.
Mm-hmm.
Help me understand is a way to, I've been able to have better conversations. I still don't, you're never going to convince me otherwise to treat somebody a certain way, but there's certain, levels at which it's just not negotiable for where I am positionally. But at least we can have not a screaming match. We maybe can find some common ground. We're never going to find common ground if we don't do the work and if we don't approach it thoughtfully, in those moments, in those one-to-one moments, going out and joining groups to advocate at a protest level is an awesome way to show support. But at one-to-one level, where those conversations can have great meaning, they have to be approached, in a way that you can have the conversation and not an argument. Where you go into it trying to do something as opposed to just have the conversation.
Yeah, I think presenting it in a way that they can understand as well, right? So when I went back to college in my 40s, I had to take speech, and we had to do a persuasive speech, right? And they gave us all of these different ideas, and one of them was, it was 2014, so right before the whole vote or the Supreme Court decision to allow gay marriage. And I was in class, and my persuasive speech was on gay marriage because that was one of the big things that was going on at the time, right? And and presenting it in a way that they could understand. So it started off with like, okay, imagine if you will, you're in the hospital, your spouse is there, something's happened, there's been an accident, and you walk in, or not even your spouse, your girlfriend, and you walk in and your girlfriend's parents or your boyfriend's parents say, no, you can't be here. Right? Like that, it was a very real thing at the time. So even I had been together for 4 years. We weren't married yet. And, you know, if her family had not been tolerant and something had happened to her, would I have been allowed to be at her side, in that moment? And that's a very real thing. So if you can like make it real for them, hey, this is a very real thing. How would you feel in a situation like this? And I think having that conversation and bringing it from, an awareness standpoint, like, are you aware why this is important? This is why. Um, so, and to your point, Bobby, like having those conversations, the important, help me understand why you're against this, or help me understand, or I can help you understand why this is important to me,
Yeah.
So,
Well, ultimately, we're all more alike than we are different, right?
oh
We
yeah,
all want the same basic things. You want to be safe, you want to be warm, you want to be loved, right? Everybody worldwide, those same basic needs are all the same. So we all have common ground to start from.
no,
I agree with that 100%. I think we're too focused sometimes on the fringes and not on the common grounds. And
Mhm.
we do a lot better if we got together on some of those too, leaving those fringes aside. Anything else? It was a great conversation. I can't wait to share it. I'm deciding if it'd be cool to pull apart. We kind of each spoke. We'd be able to pull these apart even and break them into little segments too. But I thought it was a great conversation. I'm glad we had it, and I'm glad we're continuing on, and super excited. Like we mentioned, we've got Taylor coming up in June, but before that, we'll be in person, which is awesome. And then July, I don't think I've shared this with the entire group, just Robin. I did a gut check with Robin on this. I had the opportunity of bringing on a gal from Microsoft named Mira Rodriguez. She's a brand builder in the marketing department at Microsoft. She's written a book called Women in Technology, or Women in Dynamics, or Women in Microsoft. It's Women in Microsoft. And so it's 50 years of women in Microsoft. This book is going to be published on August, or be released in August. So she's going to join us July for a author, meet and greet, and a conversation around, well, specifically women in tech, women in Microsoft. So pretty excited by that. And we'll give away a copy or two of her books. It should be a fun July event. So we got a lot of great stuff coming up.
Leaders get copies of books too, right?
We'll definitely make sure to have
Yeah.
copies. Yes, for all of us. It looks awesome. Yeah, it's got, they've done a lot of work. She and one other person, we've worked hard on this to bring us together for the 50th Microsoft anniversary. And so it should be a really expressive and fun look at that growth and what Microsoft's done to promote women in technology. So excited to see that, and excited to have her on. She's a great spirit. So anything else from anybody? I appreciate everybody and the sharing. It's been a lot of emotion and a lot of good discussion.
yeah,
Yeah.
just thank you.
Yep.
That's
Well, thank
it.
you all, and I
Thanks
look
to
forward to seeing
everybody.
you soon. Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you guys. Great
Thank
Bye,
job.
you.
everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Bye, everyone.